That is why, since that day, I have been planning my escape. I slowly opened the window and I slipped through it without hesitation, landing just behind the bushes that surround the Grand Sea. Once I reached the first trees of the forest, I began to run frantically. However, as soon as I closed my eyes, I heard rapid steps nearby. Who are you?
Sir, tis not one of the envelopes. Who are ye and what's bringing ye here?
I have already answered you. I was rescued from my homeland by Arus and his retinue.
Take him back to its hell.
Finally, a kind and remarkable young woman arrived.
If the Grecians catch you, they'll use you to sway the guardian of the worlds and wipe out the other beings who compete with them for control of Olympis. All we can do now is wait for the rain to stop and brace for the worst. Because that's when the Grecians will come.
A massive creature burst through the wooden wall that separated us from the outside. The brutal force of the attack had killed her instantly. I saw the destroyed shelters of the four-legged creatures, now reduced to rubble.
Now all that's left is to send a wee gift to that cursed heroes, and soon we'll have control of the whole planet.
The Guardian of the Worlds presents The Diary of Sot.
The Dag, the day 20th of the month of Epiphemenes of the year 42nd after Universal War. My dearest diary, it is beyond words to convey the suffering I endured in that forsaken place. Even now, I struggle to fully express the torment of being bound hand and foot in that damp, suffocating cell where those wretched creatures confined me. The isolation was so overwhelming that at times I feared I might lose completely my mind. My only interaction came when one of those beings brought me tasteless food. Its slimy texture and bitter flavor were the only things I could recognize about it. Even if I had tried to communicate with my captors, it would have been futile. They had taken my amulet, leaving me unable to understand their language, much less speak to them. I would be lying if I claimed that the image of Elak did not haunt me during those moments. Despite our vast differences in appearance, and the strange telepathic way in which she communicated with me, a concept utterly strange at first, my time there gave me the clarity to reflect. I began to understand that the Ugars had kept me prisoner because they recognized my significance and feared I might escape. Of course, their methods were far from hospitable, but I came to see that, in their own way, they acted out of concern for my well-being, and despite all our differences, Elak had always looked after me with a kind, almost sisterly care. These reflections made me relieve the cruel manner in which that innocent young woman lost her life. The sudden appearance of that monstrous being, and the fatal blow that flung my poor companion across the room. Those memories, so filled with grief and guilt, weighed heavily upon me. If only I had not fled the Grand Sanctum, if I had stayed and continued our training as planned, none of this would have happened. Elak and her people would still be alive. The Gracious would have never attacked, and by now, perhaps, I would have unlocked the power that Urus's disciples had long hoped to see in me. But now, I remained the same foolish prince I had always been. How I loathed myself for it. I was always the one to ruin everything. I recalled the many times Yakren had tried to make me see the consequences of my reckless actions. Warnings I had dismissed so easily. And I understood just how right he had been. This introspection brought me back to the day it all began. The day my parents, my siblings, and our entire world perished. For so long I had blamed that vile creature, but now I see the truth. I was the only one to blame. If instead of hiding behind my mother, when that diabolic creature appeared at our palace, demanding I accompany him, I had surrounded myself, then perhaps my family and our people would still be alive. I was the reason they suffered such cruel fate. I realized that there was no external monster to defeat. The monster was within me. The one I needed to vanquish was myself, the Prince of Valdis. Day after day, these thoughts gnawned at my mind, making my imprisonment even more unbearable. Yet, just when all hope of survival had left me, something happened that I could never have foreseen. In that distance, I heard a commotion unlike anything I had heard in that place before. What followed was beyond my imagination. In those few tense minutes, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. I wondered if the guards had launched a final desperate assault on the gracious dark remote lane, fearing that I might be used in their sinister plans to eliminate the other intelligent species of the planet. But there was something odd. It was impossible for the elegant Arus of the guards to produce the thunderous sounds I was hearing. This led me to consider the possibility that, realizing they were outmatched, the Ugars had sought help from the other creatures in the region to put an end to the gracious' evil intentions. Despite the logic of my thoughts, something still did not make sense. The violent explosions, drawing ever nearer, were accompanied by the agonized screams of the Graces. Were the fearsome Graces really being overpowered by such bold invaders? At that point, I did not care who was attacking, as long as it meant I could escape. Desperate, I began shouting at the top of my lungs, not considering the risks, hoping that whoever had come would hear me and rescue me from my torment. The sounds of the battle grew louder, and the explosions drawing closer by the second. Yet, with those sounds came a creeping doubt. What if these invaders were even more dangerous than my captors? Captors? What if they came with the same malicious intent as the Gracious? It was plausible, though. As one of Urus's guardians, I was an easy target for everyone seeking to exploit my position and seize control of Olympis. The moment that realization struck, I stopped shouting and tried to retreat as far as possible from the entrance to my cell, but it was too late. The sounds of explosions and fighting were now just yards away from where I was imprisoned, and all I could do was pray that these intruders would not take my life in the moments to come.